On today's show, the Hawks snapped their losing streak in pretty interesting fashion. It was a gritty game. I'll tell you how it actually unfolded when it comes to the defense. A not great offensive performance, a huge split on and off with Trae Young, and much more. All that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1917 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday, and I want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. That also includes YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it and tell your friends about the show. If you missed it, I dove into what became a pretty high-scoring affair on Sunday evening on the same podcast feed. Last week, we had a guest on the show with Glenn Willis. It's been busy on the show, and please subscribe, catch up, and all of that fun stuff. But most of today's podcast, we focused on what became a pretty good win for the Hawks, 98-86 at home on this Monday. Now, it snaps a three-game losing streak for the Hawks. It was what I would call a very gritty victory. It was not always pretty. In fact, it was rarely pretty in this game. And it was pretty hilarious from last night. So if you missed it, it was on Sunday, it was the highest scoring regulation game for the Hawks this year. It was 148-143 against Detroit on Sunday. 25 hours later or so in the same building, it was the lowest scoring game of the season for the Hawks. And it was 98-86. So neither one of these teams got more than 27 points quarter of the game tonight. It was a different game. It was a total rock fight, and not honestly what you would think the Hawks would be thriving in. The Hawks have been a very fast-paced team all year long. It's a very slow-paced game, all that. But in the end, it just did enough to win. And Quinn was kind of taking that tact after the game, like, games are different. You got to kind of just do what you have to do to win the game. I agree with that. And, it was an ugly one, but it was certainly a very much-needed victory, I would say, for the Hawks in this spot. So, honestly, you have to start with the defense. As I'll kind of break down the analysis, if you are new to the show, what we do here is early on in the podcast, I kind of talk about what transpired in my overall analysis. And then later on, more of my granular observations about how the game unfolded, plus some player evaluations at the end of the podcast. But it was the first time the Hawks have held an opponent to 86 points or fewer since March 14th of 2021, so almost 4 years. They haven't held an opponent under 90 points in about 2.5 years. So it's rare, obviously. And look, I'm a big proponent of pace-adjusted stats. They're just more accurate as to what you're seeing. So I use offensive rating, defensive rating, per possession numbers versus raw totals because the pace is notable. The Hawks this year have been a really fast-paced team. This is actually a very slow-paced game, which helps you actually keep the numbers down. But it was still what you think it would be. It was bad offense for the most part on both sides and great defense. I want to stress this right now. Just be very clear about this. The Hawks played very well defensively in this game. Very well. So I'm going to give you some context, but I want to be very clear about that. They were really good defensively in this game. They should be lauded for that after a rough game on Sunday defensively. At an 89 defensive rating speaks for itself. Even in a slow-paced game, they forced 18 turnovers from Miami in a slow-paced game. They made Miami's shot quality pretty difficult throughout the game. But I also have to say this. The Heat were awful in this game. They were ghastly. They missed a lot of shots that they normally would probably make. And look, that's kind of what has to happen. For a team to score 86 points in the modern NBA, they kind of have to be bad. In addition to it's not one or the other. It's both. Good defense and bad offense. And that's what happened in this game. This is not a shot at the Hawks at all. Again, they played very well, but it's a two-way street. It kind of has to be. And here's some numbers for you. Miami shot 32% from the field in this game. They were 7 of 40 from three in this game. That is 17.5% from three. They had a effective field goal percentage. Basically, that includes non-free throws, just all your shots from the field. They had a 36.3% effective field goal percentage in this game. That is the 4th worst game by any team in the league this year. That tells you how bad the shooting was. Miami's shooting was that bad. 4th worst of the season, and we're more than 2/3 of the way through the season. That's a lot of games, hundreds of games, and they're 4th worst of the year. So there you go. Now, another funny thing that happened, or funny because they won, maybe less funny if they had lost this game, if I'm talking about the Hawks. The final count on personal fouls in this game was 22-9. Miami is at least very known for their physicality. They play, all the Heat culture stuff, all that stuff. They got called for 9 fouls in 48 minutes in this game, and the Heat took 15 more free throw attempts than the Hawks. They also made 25 of their 27 free throw attempts. And that was probably the reason this game was pretty close until the end, was that Miami was taking advantage of the free throw line. I wrote about this a little bit on Monday in different places, at Fansided as well as on my Patreon. But the Hawks are 80% allowed at the free throw line this year for opponents. Obviously, you can't do anything about that. It's free throws, but they have allowed the highest percentage of free throw attempts, free throw accuracy this year, I should say, 80%. It's 83% over the last month, and the Heat shot 93% in this game. So kind of unlucky there if you're the Hawks, but they were able to overcome that. How about this stat? This is courtesy of Hawks PR. They found this for me post-game. The Hawks had not won a game when they committed 13 or more fouls more than their opponent. So the Hawks had 22 fouls called on them. The Heat had 9. They got called for 13 more fouls. The last time the Hawks won a game with 13 more fouls than their opponent was 1992, 33 years ago. So it's pretty rare to be called for that many more fouls than your opponent and still win the game, much less win the game by 12, but that happened in this one. There you go. Broadly speaking, again, defensively, it was really good from the Hawks. I've been banging the drum all year long. This is a underrated defensive team. Even after last night's disaster on defense on Sunday, the Hawks were still essentially exactly league average for the season in terms of points allowed per possession, defensive efficiency, which isn't like, of course, it's not, you don't have a parade for league average, but that is much better than they've been in recent years. And then you go out and you do this. Pretty impressive stuff defensively from the Hawks in this game. Now, offensively, it was not incredibly impressive. How about this stat? It's kind of more of a defensive stat, but the Hawks have not won a game with less than 100 points scored in about a calendar year. They were only 1-10 in their last 11 when falling short of 100 points. Because usually when you don't score 100, you're probably going to lose in the NBA, generally speaking. Also, one more on that front. They had a 102 offensive rating in this game, which is quite bad. They came into the night 0-13 this year when they had a 105 offensive rating or worse. So basically their 13 worst offensive games of the year, they lost all of them until tonight. Because they were so good defensively, they were able to win despite having a bad offensive game, like objectively a bad offensive game in this spot. So it was not pretty at all. They did soundly outshoot the Heat. 58% on 2 is actually quite good. They were good inside the arc. But they won this game by 12 despite shooting 9 of 35 from 3, which is bad. Of course, it was better than Miami, but still was bad. And, of course, the free throw line, which I already mentioned. The starting perimeter trio of Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, and Zachary Richache was 0 of 13 from 3 in this game. And the Hawks still won. And they had 18 turnovers. So it was not always pretty. They did manage to push the tip a little bit. But even Quinn said post-game, they just were not effective. A lot of blown, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s in the fast break in this game, et cetera, et cetera. It was not one that you will be telling your grandkids about, let's just say, offensively. But I do have one kind of funny stat. Again, funny because they won, and it's easier to kind of laugh about it now. Pretty crazy here. So the Hawks were plus 26 in Trae Young's 38 minutes in this game. So basically, they dominated the game with Trae on the court. Plus 26 is a lot. They were also minus 14 in his 10 minutes off the court. Now, that's a big split in itself. But here's why. The offense with Trae on the court was actually pretty good in this game. They had a 117 offensive rating with Trae Young on the court. That's better than their league. That's better than their league average. It's better than their average this year. That's a good offense for 38 minutes. When Trae was off the court, and look, this is more small sample size, but it's not necessarily indicative. They scored 0.4 points per possession in 10 minutes with Trae off the court. That's a 40 offensive rating for 10 minutes. They just could not score with Trae off the court. It was actually hilarious. So if you want to be a little bit optimistic, you could say the Hawks actually were pretty decent offensively when they had their guys on the court. Without Trae, it was pretty rough. But look, they did enough to win. No one had a great individual game offensively other than Okongwu, I think, was pretty good in this game with 17 points on 11 shooting possessions. But they had good balance. Trae had 14 assists, for instance. They had 6 guys in double figures. They had 8 guys with 8 points or more. So no one was bad either. So no one had a great offensive game other than maybe Onyeka and maybe a little bit of Terance Mann. No one really struggled other than maybe Ricochet with his he had a bad shooting night, but they just played solidly. And if you kind of grit on a curve a little bit with the non-Trey minutes, they were okay-ish offensively, if you want to get there. But look, this was a hideous game. If you watched it, it was not one that you want to be, that you would say you're probably just purely entertained by. I appreciate good defense more than most, I have to say. But even then, it was a scratching and clawing and slow-paced and grinded out game. It was like very college basketball-like in some respects, which I kind of appreciate too. But in the end, a badly needed win for the Hawks. Again, they lost their games in a row. They could not afford, in my opinion, to go into this game. On Friday, they played the Thunder, who are the best team in the league, probably. If they had lost tonight, they would have been an underdog again on Wednesday on the road. It would have been tough. So they had to get one of these home games. They finally get one at the end after losing a couple frustrating ones to begin the second half, quote-unquote, second half of the season. But, big picture, a nice win. It wasn't pretty, but a great defensive performance. And certainly will sort of hang your hat on that as they go into their first road game of the post-All-Star break run on Wednesday. All right, we'll get into more of how this game unfolded. The granular observations, how the Hawks kind of pulled away a little bit in this one, and more, and all of that's coming up in just one moment. Today's show is sponsored by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player draws 50 points or more in a game, you can score a huge deal the next day. It's very simple. When any player has 50 points or more in a game this season, in the regular season across the NBA world, Dash Pass members get 50% off and order up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. After an epic 50-point performance, celebrate by ordering wings and pizza or burgers, etc. For your favorite places delivered straight to your door, or perhaps a late night stack. If you're someone like me who's up late at night doing work stuff, etc., use Dash Pass to grab something delicious while saving big as well. Or if you want lunch on the go, actually use Dash Pass as well to get favorite meals and with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees as well. Plus, now you can save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. Sign up for Dash Pass right now. Be ready to save. And when any player scores 50 points or more in a game, members of Dash Pass 50% off and order the next day up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders of participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. All right, so as I alluded to earlier in this podcast, there was no offensive explosion really at any point. It was a rock fight from the beginning to the end. No team had more than 27 points in any quarter, and that was the start of the game was 23-22 in the first period. Now, the Hawks had some early turnover issues. They had 5 in the first 7 minutes offensively, but there was a much better, I think, performance overall, but especially the start from Mo Gay than he's had the last couple of games. He's been really struggling coming into the night. A couple of nice defensive plays early on, hit a corner 3, also had a quick layup after a nice pass from Trey. Still some mistakes from Mo for sure, but much more of a positive impact in this one than he had in the previous couple of games for the Hawks. Rotationally, it was very similar for the Hawks overall. They had 9 guys that played again. The bench was Niang, Capella, LeVert, and Mann. Still nothing from Don Barlow or Garrett Matthews or Keaton Wallace in this game. It was a little bit more of Terance Mann late in this one, a little bit less of Niang, who had foul trouble, etc. But it was the same 9 guys who have been playing for a little while now in the absence of Johnson and Krejci and Larry Nance Jr. They did get bogged down a little bit offensively. Again, I teased it before. I won't try to dwell on it too much, but the offense without Trey was just disastrous. Part of that, I have to say, I don't love the bench minutes having Capella and Terance Mann and no Trey. Like, if Trey's going to be on the bench, I'd like to have that be a little bit more. Maybe you have a Kongwu, maybe just more spacing in general, a little bit more creation in general with Trey off the floor. I would try to heavily tie Trey to Capella. Not exclusively, but if you're not going to have Trey on the court, you probably need to have everybody else be able to create offense. And they didn't really have that great of a lineup, so there were some questions about that. But yeah, I mean, the pace of the game was just so much different. It was so much slower and uglier, and that continued for a long time. It got a little bit better than this, but it was the first 20-plus minutes of the game, the two teams were combined to shoot 6 of 37 from 3. Like, it got a little better, but man, that was really, really rough on both sides for a lot of the first half. They also ran another pretty offensively challenged up with Trey's second rest. This time it was Capella on the bench with Trey off the floor, but no Trey, no LeVert, and no Niang led to Mo Gay playing with a center next to him and Dyson and Mann, and that's not going to work either. So there's some balance issues I think they're still experimenting with the new guys, what they're all capable of doing. There's no perfect solution, but that was those two lineups were not effective. Let's just say offensively, they just could not score in this one. The Hawks did finally have a nice offensive run late in the first half. They scored 10 points in like 2 minutes at the end of the half. Niang was great. He had his best stretch of the game at the end of the first half. A couple of threes, had a nice pass to LeVert. Also had a nice defensive position against Jaime Jaquez, locked him up. And the Hawks, despite all of their bad shooting, were up by 8 points at halftime because Miami was 3 of 23 from 3 in the first half. The Hawks then took control of the game early in the third a little bit with an 8-0 run to go up by 13. Kong made a three. That was his second one of the game, actually. But there was no comfort in that. Once again, when Trey went to the bench, it was a 10-0 run by Miami, like almost right away to get right back in the game again. It ended up being kind of stabilized at 23-23 overall in the third quarter, but only because Trey kind of got things back on the rails a little bit at the end of the period. And by the way, because of, I think, Quinn didn't say this, but I think it's pretty much implied, because of how bad it had gone without Trey on the floor, he played the last 15 plus minutes straight in a game on the second out of a back-to-back. I know they didn't travel, but you do not see Trey play that much in a row on a back-to-back to end the game. But I think Quinn probably rightly thought he couldn't take him out. And that was, it worked, but that was notable to me for sure. They were up 8 goals in the fourth quarter, despite scoring 73 points on 73 possessions, going through 3 quarters. Pretty rough stuff there. I thought Caris LeVert had been pretty terrible, honestly, for 3 quarters, but he had a couple of big moments in the fourth that were very, very helpful for him. Had 5 points early in the fourth quarter. Then, it was already frustrating at that point with the officiating, but the Hawks called for 4 fouls in 86 seconds early in the fourth quarter, which put Miami in a bonus with like 10 minutes to go in the game. That magnified the already growing split of fouls. At least 2, if not 3 of those calls were very shaky calls, which probably didn't help. And at that point, the Hawks had 19 fouls and Miami had 5. So it was a little bit more even than that the rest of the game, but man, that's tough to kind of reconcile. It teetered a little bit for the Hawks after that foul spree, but then the Hawks kind of a sneaky stretch here where there was a Capella tip in, and then Dyson got a steal to kick it out to Ricochet for LeVert for a fast break dunk to go back up by 9. That was a big play. There was one disaster at the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter where the Hawks missed back-to-back layups in transition offensively. And then LeVert got called for a loose ball foul 90 feet away from the basket. And because Miami was already in the bonus with all those fouls, it was 2 free points. So it was basically a 4-point swing. Not great there. But they did score well after that to kind of mitigate the issues. They were never in dire straits. They were only up by 5 or 6. There was actually a big swing, with 3:30 to go. Trey got called for a loose ball foul that I thought was a terrible call in real time. Quinn challenged it, rightly so, won that challenge. Now, if you want to live in the dark place and say, if they lose that challenge, it might have been a little bit dicey. They were only up by 6. It would have had Miami going to the line to get within 4. But they win it, and then even bigger that they won that challenge, that Terance Mann had 3 on the next possession. So that was a 5-point swing potentially towards Atlanta. And from there, they were really never challenged. It was still 7-ish was the lowest it got down the stretch. Trey made a floater to go put it back up to 9, and they forced 3 straight turnovers to kind of end the game. Then the Hawks actually challenged a call on Dyson with 30 seconds to go, up by 12. And Quinn was a little bit sheepish about that post-game, but it was the right call to do it. Dyson got his 7th steal of the night, and Quinn didn't necessarily love doing that. I think he felt like he had to. It was the right play. The game was already over, but there you go. And look, it was a little bit of a chef's kiss, I would say, after the foul disparity throughout the game. But I thought the Hawks generally played well enough offensively when it mattered. They made a couple of big plays. It was not comfortable until the very, very end. No, they were largely in control. They led, I think, the entire second half, but it was not necessarily, comfortable. This is the word I keep going back to, but that's the word I'm feeling. But generally speaking, they held them off. And look, defensively, they were really good the entire game. There was not really a stretch of the entire night when Miami got it going offensively. They made a couple threes during their 10-0 run. That was their one time they actually got a little bit going in the third quarter, but that stopped really fast. And, part of that, again, was that they missed a bunch of shots. But the Hawks just clamped Tyler Hero, for instance. Hero has had a great season. I have to say, I've always been low on him compared to everybody else. I've been wrong this year about Hero. He's having a really good year. I don't think he should have been an all-star, but he's a good player. Like, he's been very good this year. He was really bad in this game. In fact, pretty much everyone other than Andrew Wiggins and maybe Kyle Anderson was not good offensively for Miami in this game, but Hero was 4 of 19 from the floor. Wiggins was pretty good. Anyway, the Hawks did a good job defensively, and that is why it was never quite teetering over the way that it could have in a different situation. All right, so we have more to come when it comes to the player evaluations on this podcast, and there's plenty to get to, I would say, especially this battery of numbers on Dyson Daniels. Dyson's stats are getting out of control defensively in a best possible way for the Hawks. We'll get into all that and more in just one moment. All right, we'll dive in now to the individual player evaluations in this game. Like I said, there was no one that I thought played really poorly for Atlanta. One guy didn't shoot it well. We'll talk about that in a minute with Ricochet, but everybody else was like okay or better for Atlanta, and which kind of makes sense when you win. Capella played 19 minutes off the bench, 8 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, an assist. Offensively, Clint was pretty clunky, as he often is. I don't think he played great in this game by any means, but defensively he was good. And also, I thought he was really, really active on the glass, and that shows. Like 11 rebounds in 19 minutes, including 5 offensively. That's vintage Clint in a lot of ways. Again, clicking off on offense, but they were pretty good when he played, +2 in the game, and some quality minutes off the bench for Capella. I mentioned before, I thought LeVert for 3 quarters was pretty rough in this game, but he had a good fourth quarter. 15 points on 14 shooting possessions is not fantastic. 2 assists, only 1 turnover, +5. A couple nice defensive plays, I thought, from Karras, but he was one of the shakier guys throughout the game, but he made up for it a little bit late in the contest. Niang had a quiet second half. He did not score in the second half. I think he got a lot of foul trouble, had 5 fouls, but ended up with 11 points on 9 shooting possessions. Took 7 threes. I think Kevin Schnard asked us about Trey post game, about just playing with someone like Niang, who kind of shoots very willingly, and I love that about Niang. Trey basically compared him to like the pick and pop version of Bogey, is the way that Trey said it after the game, in that he's just aggressively letting it fly. And I agree. Like, again, the comp for the Hawks recently is Gallinari, but Niang's just letting it fly. He's their best shooter, and it's working. I know defensively he's a little bit limited, but I thought he was helpful, especially in the first half for Atlanta. And then Terance Mann had his biggest game as a Hawk, 15 points on 6 of 9 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. He closed over Ricochet, which I didn't necessarily love, but I understood it because he was playing well. So I thought it was an encouraging game for Mann, to be sure. To the starters in this one. We'll go to Ricochet first. He had the one bad shooting night. He was 1 of 8 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3, 2.3 rebounds, and an assist. Just when I was talking about Ricochet having a pretty good Rookie of the Year case today online, he goes out and misses a bunch of shots. But I thought he actually played well in the floor game. This is one of those times where it's important to look beyond the box score. Like, he obviously didn't make shots, but the little things were really good defensively. Made a couple nice passes, help defense, etc. Like, he wasn't good tonight, but I thought he was better than the box score would say. Muhammad Gay played much better in this game. Didn't play a ton again. I know there's there's always talk about starting lineups and all that stuff. He's not playing starter minutes, and that's okay. The Hawks have shown a repeated willingness this year to have one of their starting level players come off the bench. Hunter was coming off the bench all year long. Obviously, Hunter is better than George Niang, but Niang is the starting power forward in every way other than he doesn't start the game right now. Obviously, Jalen Johnson is the real starting power forward, but he's hurt. But Niang is playing more than Mo Gay every game, and that should happen. He's better than Mo Gay. But lineup-wise, rotation-wise, this is something that Quinn likes. And I thought Mo actually earned his minutes in this game. 16 minutes, 9 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, had a block. Offensively, it's still not great. He's always in the wrong spot, but I thought he was at least active tonight. And then defensively, he made a bunch of plays. Now, the mistakes are evident too, but I think he more than outweighed that defensively in this one with just his activity level, his range, a couple nice passes. I thought Mo played well. He wasn't great, but he gave them enough, which is good. Elsewhere, Okongwu was really good, I thought, in this game, offensively in particular. 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, hit 2 threes. He hadn't been a 3 in like 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks until tonight, but he shot with confidence, was 2 of 3 from 3 in this one. Good passing, as he has a lot recently. I think it's still very underrated, even by Hawks fans even. that his passing has been really valuable as a hub. And I thought he was a good finisher in this one. Just a good game for him overall. It's a very big Miami front court. They're playing a lot with Ware and Adebayo together, and it was not phasing Okongwu in this game. Dyson Daniels, 10 points, 11 rebounds. Offensively, he was not incredible in this game. 10 points on 12 shots. Missed some bunnies that he probably wants back. So that's worth noting. And look, I think he had one of his rougher defensive games of the year on Sunday when he could not stop Cade Cunningham because nobody could. But he turns around tonight and has 7 steals. 7 steals. Here's some numbers on Dyson. He's now had 7 steals or more 3 times this year. No one has done that in a season. So 3 games with 7 steals or more in a season since 2009. That was Chris Paul 15 plus years ago. That's one stat. He now has 29 straight games with at least 1 steal. That's the longest streak by a Hawk since 1999. And that's Mookie Blaylock 26 years ago. Also, he now has more than 200 stocks, so steals plus blocks. Only one guy in the league has that many, and it's Wembanyama, who is now out for the season. So Dyson's going to probably lead the league in stocks this year. He's obviously demolishing the field in steals and deflections. That's not new, but he's now back over 3.0 steals per game for the year, which has not happened since like the early 90s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I keep going, but he was great defensively in this game. Not just good. He actually was asked, Quinn was asked pregame about Dyson, and by a reporter from Miami, actually. And he basically said what he said before, but I just want to pass it along, where the question was about Dyson steals, which obviously is the calling card. I get that. But Quinn even said right away, like, the impressive thing about Dyson is that he does it without gambling. That's the way that he put it. And also, for me, I'll add this, he's also able to take the number 1 assignment every night. A lot of guys who get a lot of steals are not the primary guy on the number 1 option. Dyson is guarding the number 1 option every night and leading the league in steals and deflections and not fouling a lot and not gambling a lot. That is an impossible combination, and he's doing it. Also, look, it's never in the NBA as simple as one guy guarding one guy. I always say that on good nights, on bad nights, etc. But he was the primary on Tyler Hero tonight, and Hero had just nothing. Obviously, he missed some shots that he normally would make, to be fair. In the same way that Cade made every shot last night, Hero was not as bad as the numbers indicate tonight, but he did that while having 7 steals. So Dyson was awesome. Even with his shaky offensive performance, he was really good defensively and was +7. That was the third best number on the team behind Trey and Onyeka. And finally, Trae Young. A weird night for Trey. So 11 points is not a good night for Trey as a scorer. In fact, that's one of his lower scoring games of the season. I'm looking at it right now to make sure I'm not crazy. Yeah, it's actually his 3rd lowest scoring game of the year. That's wild because he was, again, +26 in this game. The Hawks were good off when he played and terrible when he didn't. He had 14 assists in the game, which is obviously really good. He actually was good inside the arc. He was 4 of 7 from 2. He just happened to miss all of his threes. That's as simple as, honestly, offensively, if Trey had just made his normal amount of threes, he would have had like a 20-point, 14-assist game. Instead, he was 0 of 7 from 3, so it looked like he didn't have a good game, quote unquote, if you just look at that. But the passing, the playmaking, the defense was pretty good, actually, I thought, for Trey in this game, +26, and there you have it. So I thought Trey was just pretty good. It wasn't like he was awesome, but a weird combination there about, the bad shooting was notable, but also he was in total control throughout the game. So, look, it's actually going to be interesting to see. The Hawks play the Heat again in 48 hours, or less than that, actually. As I'm recording this podcast on Monday night, the Hawks play the Heat on Wednesday. So this time, both teams run a back-to-back tonight. Both teams will be on normal rest on Wednesday. The game's in Miami. And I'll be interested to see how these teams react. Obviously, it's about who shoots better, all that stuff. But the Hawks actually were, early in the day today, were small underdogs. They actually were small favorites at FanDuel at tip-off. So it was a coin flip kind of game. I would imagine the Hawks would be underdogs in the betting market on Wednesday. But a rematch, same 2 teams, 48 hours apart, different city, and that'll be a fun one to kind of chronicle on Wednesday night. In the meantime, please subscribe to this podcast. I appreciate everyone listening to the show. I joke about this, but it's actually true. When the Hawks lose, the numbers go down. That's not a shocking phenomenon, but I hope that even if you don't want to listen, and I get it, not everybody likes to listen to losses, I try to give you some content that's relevant even in losses and interesting and hopefully looks at the future, etc. but please at least download the podcast when they lose. Just please, a plea from me to support the podcast. But also check us out on Apple, check us out on Spotify, Amazon, Overcast, etc. We're also on YouTube. Please like the video there and comment if you'd like to on that platform. And please spread the word to your friends as well. Follow the show on X/Twitter. It's at Locked On Hawks. I am there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. And also follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. And we might have a show Tuesday night. I'm not exactly sure yet if I'll have a show between now and Wednesday, but at the very least, our next podcast will be at the very latest, I should say, after the game on Wednesday. So stay tuned. Please subscribe. We'll see you all next time.